1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. I'm Aaron.
I'm Tom.
And welcome to the spooky October world of Baby's First Watch List, where I have been doing an opposite Nightmare on Elm Street for the past 3 months. At 3 a.m. last night, instead of trying to stay awake, all I wanted to do was sleep. Where are you, Freddy?
Are you saying that you would rather be murdered in your sleep than...
No, I'd rather be fighting Freddy in my sleep. That's right. We are discussing 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street, the debut of GOAT-tier horror villain Freddy Krueger.
Yep.
What do you think Freddy Krueger's wrestling song would be?
Oh, man. I don't know. I'll have to think about that one.
This is probably Dreamweaver, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, Dreamweaver. Which I know as a song from Daddy Daycare.
That was part of his conception, was that song. Was Wes Craven liked that song.
Voila.
Yeah.
This is our second Wes Craven movie. He directed Scream, and he wrote and directed Nightmare. I'm going to call it Nightmare.
You're not going to call it Elm Street?
No. I like Nightmare better.
Okay.
As I'm sure you've guessed, A Nightmare on Elm Street. I have to put the in there because that's like the...
Yeah, you have
my favorite part of the title is the A at the beginning. Was a massive critical and commercial success. It made $57 million. I'm speechless, babbling at how much money it made on a $1.1 million budget. Very kind of low budget for nowadays.
Very low budget. In fact, this movie kept New Line Cinema alive.
I wrote something about New Line Cinema.
Yeah, they didn't have much to spend on it, and when it made so much money, they called it the house that Freddy built.
I have that
there you go.
On here, yep. They had to get money from all these benefactors and stuff,
and
randos.
They tried to sell it to Paramount, and the producer, when Paramount ended up passing, because it was too similar to another movie that had to do with dreams. I think it was called Brainstorm.
Brainstorm.
Yeah, that had already come out that Paramount had put out. When Paramount turned it down, the guy who produced I forget his name, who produced Nightmare on Elm Street, said later on that was the best rejection he's ever had in his life because he made so much money off of that rejection.
I bet. It is also considered one of the best horror movies ever made. In fact, last year, in 2021, the National Film Registry at the Library of Congress chose this film for preservation for being culturally impactful, et cetera, which I find funny when you think about how terrifying Freddy Krueger is for many, many children.
And how, dumb the movie is.
I don't find it dumb.
The dialogue in it, but when you think Library of Congress, you think The King and I, and
But Shrek was chosen a couple years ago. Yeah. Right. One review that I thought that was particularly true was from critic Kim Newman, who compared it to a Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah.
She specifically talked about that it was set in a small town and it had, quote, an invented monster myth. And that's very Stephen King. I also felt major Stephen King vibes from this movie. As far as casting goes, A Nightmare on Elm Street is best known as Johnny Depp's debut film. Johnny Depp, if you do not know, is a famous actor. The star of the movie, though, is Heather Langenkamp. Is that correct, the way I said it? And, of course, it also features Robert Englund as Freddy himself.
Mm-hmm. Now, who goes by Fred in most of this movie.
Yes. Yeah. That's kind of weird. He's played Freddy Krueger 8 times, I think I counted.
Yeah.
Until the 9th movie, a remake released in 2010. Do you know who played Freddy?
I don't.
Jackie Earle Haley.
Okay.
So Haley originally auditioned in the 80s.
Oh, cool.
For the role.
I was thinking Mark Hamill, actually. But no. I think that's because he played Chucky in the remake.
Oh, okay. And he's always a Batman villain and stuff,
a Joker.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Haley, Jackie Earle Haley, he was in something kind of recently that I think got some press and stuff, but I know him best for his role in, I think it's 2006's, 2005's Little Children. He received an Oscar nomination, and until Midsummer, that was the movie that scarred me the most in my life.
2006.
2006. He plays a really kind of guy, and I don't like it.
Oh, he was Rorschach in Watchmen as well. The movie, not the TV series.
He's actually a pretty prolific actor in what he's been in. He's been in a ton of stuff. He has a very distinct look. So if you ever see him in something, you'll probably be like, oh yeah, that's him from then on. Anyway, Robert Englund is the one who plays Freddy for most of the time. The sequels have not fared super well critically. They include number 2, Freddy's Revenge, 3, Dream Warriors, with a actually kind of stacked cast. Patricia Arquette and Lawrence Fishburne, who was Larry Fishburne,
ew.
were in it, as well as Zsa Zsa Gabor was listed on the cast. I was like, okay. Number 4, The Dream Master. Number 5, The Dream Child, where yes, Freddy uses a baby to do his dream stuff. Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Wes Craven's A New Nightmare.
The Final Nightmare.
Freddy vs. Jason, and the remake that I mentioned from 2010.
It was already that long ago?
Yeah.
There hasn't been a Nightmare on Elm Street movie since 2010?
Nope.
Wow.
And I'll talk about that too. I remember my senior year of high school, I felt like they were remaking everything horror. They remade Friday the 13th. I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast, that was the movie that a local priest was sitting next to me, and he was laughing at very inappropriate parts. Yeah, I hated it so much.
I think at one point you did.
I was like, okay, not seeing the Nightmare on Elm Street because I'm scared.
Yeah.
The only one that really interests me is 1994's Wes Craven's A New Nightmare. Did you look that one up a little bit? It's kind of interesting. Craven, Langenkamp, and Englund all play themselves.
That's very Stephen King.
It's a meta film, where they have to, Freddy takes other forms and they have to kill him as the actor, as themselves. Yeah. It's very interesting. It did not do well when it came out, but has since been seen as a really cool one, one of the best. There have been talks of more Nightmare movies or maybe even an HBO Max series, but nothing has come of talks. The rights have gone back to Wes Craven's estate. Yeah. I think in 2019. Before then, the guy who made Orphan tried to do something with it. Okay. There have been a few things put out there, oh, maybe we'll do a new one. Nothing ever really happened.
It'll come back.
Yeah. New Line Cinema, once, as you mentioned, called The House That Freddy Built, is apparently more interested in expanding the Conjuring universe when it comes to horror.
Which is fair. They're making a ton of money on the Conjuring.
Exactly. Robert Englund did play Freddy in an episode of The Goldbergs, though. So there's that. My last things here. And then I'm going to give you the summary, and then I'm going to get the baby that's crying. Okay. Nightmare is seen as the 3rd highest grossing horror series of all time. Can you guess what number 1 and number 2 are?
Friday the 13th?
That's number 2.
Halloween.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was flipped until somewhere between 2010 and 2018, because I saw Friday the 13th was number 1 on Nightmares Wiki, and I was like, wait, but Halloween came out with a couple movies, so I wonder if that's outdated. Lo and behold, if you go to Halloween's, the franchise wiki, they have the updated figures.
Well, I mean, if you have a series that stars Busta Rhymes in one of your films, you're probably going to be the number 1 in the box office.
It's true. Do you want to guess? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other ones.
6?
6 other horror franchises. Conjuring is not one of them.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's one of them.
So this is the top 10 or whatever?
Yeah, yeah.
Insidious?
No.
The Omen?
No.
Scream?
Yes.
Scream's on there.
You might get 2 of the others.
Okay, I don't know.
All right, so after Nightmare, it's Hannibal Lecter's stuff.
Oh, okay, you count, yeah, right.
Then it's Saw.
Oh, yeah. I forgot how many Saws. There's 9 Saw movies.
Tons of Saws. Scream.
Yeah.
Psycho, which is interesting. Okay. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Child's Play.
Oh, yeah.
Chucky vibes.
Yep.
So, yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, although in the 90s and late 80s, it had like a, oh my God, this is like so dumb kind of thing with all the sequels, and Freddy kind of became like a humorous thing. The original is a total classic.
For sure.
I loved it.
It was very fun.
It was so fun. Tom, I'm going to get the baby. Give us a summary.
All right. So we open with a girl named Tina, played by Amanda Wyss, in a boiler room. She's attacked by a disfigured man wearing a hat, as well as a red and green striped sweater and a glove fixed with blades. Obviously, he's unnamed at this point, but you know it's Freddy Krueger. He's played by Robert Englund. Tina wakes from this nightmare, but she notices that her nightgown has 4 slashes in it. Ooh, that's scary. The next morning, Tina's best friend Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp, and Nancy's boyfriend Glenn, played by Johnny Depp, tell Tina that they too had a nightmare the previous night. Because Tina's really scared, obviously, Nancy and Glenn stay over her house while her mom is away, and Nancy tells Tina that her nightmare also involved the man in the sweater and glove. Tina's boyfriend Rod, played by Nick Corey, who actually goes by a different name that I didn't write down.
He also, I think, is the one that runs a religion that's very small.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tina's boyfriend Rod shows up and he sleeps with Tina. When Tina falls asleep, the disfigured man chases her once more. We switch to the real world where Rod sees Tina's body thrashed and slashed seemingly by nothing as her bloody body is dragged to the ceiling and thrown around the room.
That is like seriously one of the most wild scenes I've ever seen.
It was nuts.
Wild.
Like you think of movies like this from 1984 or like whatever. Like This is nuts.
It's truly insane. Made scarier by the fact that it wasn't all special effects, which we'll talk about later.
I'm going to talk about that a little later. So Rod flees. Because, whatever. Like, you gotta get out of there. Nancy and Glenn find Tina dead. The following day, Nancy's father, Don, played by John Saxon, a police officer in town,
arrests... He's a guy who's known for playing horror and Western roles, often as a police officer, I found out.
So he's typecast, in that way.
Yeah.
He's a police officer in town, and he arrests Rod because, he was locked in a room alone with Tina when Tina's got murdered. So, of course, he's the number one suspect. Although Rod and Nancy are pleading Rod's innocence. At school, Nancy dozes off during an English lesson and sees the corpse of Tina in a body bag, leading her to the boiler room, where the man corners her. Nancy recognizes that she's dreaming, though, and she's really perceptive in this movie. And she purposely burns her arm on a pipe, waking her real self up with a burn on her arm from the dream. After leaving school, Nancy visits Rod at the police station, and Rod continues to maintain his innocence, claiming that he had the same nightmare as Tina and Nancy. That night, still restless, Nancy dozes off in the bathtub, and the man drags her underneath the water in her dream, nearly drowning her until she wakes up.
Yeah, that scene's crazy too.
Another crazy scene. From that point on, Nancy actively decides she's not going to sleep. So she starts drinking coffee and taking caffeine pills. Which they just had in the house. Yeah, which I think is like I could see that in like the 80s suburban
The mom had issues.
Yeah. She also asks Glenn to climb in through her window and watch her while she sleeps and to wake her if she looks like she's in trouble in her dream. In Nancy's dream, she sees the man phase through the bars of Rod's cell about to kill him, when suddenly he turns his gaze to her and starts to give chase. As the man is closing in, ready to kill Nancy, she wakes up to find Glenn asleep, and she yells at him. Rightfully so. Glenn,
get your stuff together,
your
Glenn.
Girlfriend is going through some stuff. Whether or not you believe her, this dream stuff, you gotta just wait there and don't sleep.
Also, why wouldn't he believe her at least, like, kind of? You know? Like, he saw what happened with Tina.
I guess.
Like, but and if he thinks Rod's innocent,
I don't think he did. I don't think there was any.
I thought you said Tina and Glenn, or
no,
Nancy and Glenn thought he was innocent.
No, Rod and Nancy said Rod was innocent.
Thought Rod was innocent.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
So Nancy and Glenn head down to the police station to warn Don that Rod is in danger. A lot of like one-syllable names here.
Yeah. Kind of like your friend group.
I guess. But by the time the skeptical officers check on Rod, he had already been hanged by an unseen force by his bed sheets, and he's dead. R.I.P. Rod.
Oh, man.
Nancy speaks with Glenn about dream skills, which Glenn explains is basically control over your dream, where, if you see a monster in your dream, you turn your back on it, you take away its energy, and it disappears.
Smart.
Yeah, I mean, smart for this movie, but doesn't sound like a real thing.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
After Rod's funeral, Nancy's parents become even more worried when she describes her dreams, and so Marge, her mom, decides to bring her to a sleep study to have her dreams examined.
I love that name.
Marge.
Marge is a great name.
At the sleep study, Nancy's numbers begin to fly off the charts as she begins to thrash in her bed. When Nancy wakes, she produces the man's fedora, straight from her dream, with
That's wild.
With the name Fred Krueger written on the inside.
Incels everywhere are like, hey, that's my fedora.
Yes. Nancy's mom barricades the house. She brings Nancy to the basement. She pulls Krueger's glove out of her furnace. She explains that Krueger was a child murderer who killed 20 children.
Yeah, that is kind of insane.
20 children is a lot.
That's insane.
But because of a procedural error, he was released from jail.
What's kind of interesting is that, I don't think any of the Nightmare movies have been a prequel. Don't you think that, that's a really good prequel to do?
Yeah, but you can't have Freddy in it. It's got to be down to earth.
It's still Freddy.
But there's no dreams.
It's a live Freddy.
Yeah, but unless you did it split, where it was part, not split the movie, but part sequel, part prequel, because you want Freddy in the movie. You want the Freddy in the movie.
I guess also it's kind of he killed 20 people. That's not really a fun movie.
Right.
Children.
Yeah.
That's not a fun movie.
Right, exactly. The victims' parents, some of whom I assume were living on Elm Street, burned Krueger alive, and Nancy realizes that Krueger is in all of her friends' dreams, killing them out of revenge for what their parents did to him.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
he shouldn't do that.
He was killing kids anyway.
Yeah, he's a bad guy.
Yeah. Nancy tries to warn Glenn, but Glenn's father pulls the phone off the hook, which is obviously super dated, and Glenn is killed by Krueger in his dream, and there is maybe more blood than I've ever seen in any scene in any movie ever.
I thought that the scene at the beginning, what's her name's death scene? Tina's death scene, I was like, that is so awesome. How are they going to top that? Sorry, Glenn, aka Johnny Depp, his scene there of his character's demise, iconic.
Unreal. So basically what happens is he's supposed to wake up Nancy while she's going through the dream that she's having so she can grab Freddy and kill him or whatever. And he falls asleep listening to the radio and watching, what was it? Miss
Nude America.
Miss Nude America. And so he sort of dozes off and, the scene goes to him in his bed. And all of a sudden you hear the radio announcer say that he's listening to radio KRGR.
Yeah, Krueger,
yeah. And then all of a sudden he gets sucked in through the bed.
Yeah.
And there's a giant hole in the bed.
Yeah.
And then the bed just starts exploding with blood, straight up to the ceiling, splashing all over the ceiling. They call it a blood geyser is the nickname for it.
We went to Yellowstone 2 summers ago, and that's very much what it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a wild scene. You should YouTube it if you haven't seen it.
I wonder
or don't
if
remember.
they were inspired by the elevator scene in The Shining.
They are a little bit.
Oh, really?
A little bit, yeah.
Because that was only a couple years earlier, and that's obviously when I think of a blood in a scene, that's the one I think of.
But this scene also sort of was an accident, so I will get into that a little bit later.
Awesome.
There's gallons of blood flying all over the room. His body's not even there. His body's gone.
Gone.
Nancy calls her father, who is across the street investigating Glenn's murder. I mean, I guess presumed murder. And she asks him to break into her house in 20 minutes, again, to have somebody nearby to capture Freddy when she pulls him out of her dream. Mm-hmm. Don still is skeptical. He doesn't really believe her.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying, yeah, right. But he does have one of his people watch over the house to see if there was anything going on. Meanwhile, Nancy sets up a bunch of booby traps around her house, including gasoline in the basement and a giant sledgehammer rigged above the outside of her bedroom door. Which is, where did you get that sledgehammer?
I don't know.
She falls asleep, setting an alarm for 10 minutes after she falls asleep. When the time is up, she grabs Krueger in the dream and drags him into the real world. Her traps work to slow him down, but they're really slapstick.
Yeah.
He gets bonked by the sledgehammer and tumbles down the stairs, and he's like, ugh.
Very realistic.
Right. And in the basement, after Nancy sets him on fire, Krueger runs up the basement stairs. Nancy slams the door, so Krueger falls back down the stairs, still ablaze, totally on fire, a lot of fire also, as Nancy locks the basement door to try to find her father and bring him back to grab Freddy. Don breaks the door down, and he and the police enter the home, but Freddy's not in the basement. Instead, they notice fiery footsteps headed straight to Nancy's mother's room, where Nancy and Don find Marge and Freddy struggling into the bed until Marge's charred corpse appears.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this crazy light, too.
Yeah.
That's like, oh!
Yeah. Don leaves the room to allow Nancy to sort of pay her respects, and Krueger appears behind her. But she calmly turns her back to him, calling back to her conversation with Glenn. And when Krueger tries to lunge at her, he sort of like evaporates.
Yeah, because she's like, you're not real.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And but I'm talking about like the way he evaporates is so 80s.
Very 80s.
So we fade out with Nancy, the victor, and we fade back in. Nancy opens her front door to extremely bright sunlight. She speaks with Marge on the foggy porch and walks to the curb, where Glenn pulls up in his convertible with Tina and Rod in the back seat. Mm-hmm. Suddenly,
it was all a dream.
The top of the convertible slams closed, and we see its coloring, green and red stripes on the top. The kids are locked in the car. Freddy's driving. The car speeds down the street. The camera lasers over to a group of girls in white dresses playing jump rope, singing Freddy's nursery rhyme. Mm-hmm. Krueger grabs Marge through the front door window in one final little jump scare, and he pulls her through, and the credits roll.
That's very a la Carrie.
Yes. Yeah. Wes Craven wanted a totally different ending. He wanted the whole thing to be a nightmare. Like the whole movie to be a nightmare, so that she wakes up at the end and she is, out there on the porch talking to her mom. Her mom quit drinking, like all this stuff. And he wanted Nancy to win because he felt that anything else would sort of cheapen the rest of the movie. But New Line, Robert Shea is the producer. That was his name. He demanded, they wanted a twist ending because they wanted to set up sequels. They wanted more out of Freddy. Craven basically said that the original ending has her come out the door. A car pulls up with her dead friends in it. She's startled. They drive off into the fog. The mom is standing on the doorstep, and that's it.
I kind of like that better.
Very brief, and he said it was suggestive that maybe life is sort of dreamlike too.
Yeah.
Shay wanted Freddy to be driving the car and have the kids screaming. It all became very negative, Craven said. Craven said he felt a philosophical tension to his ending. Shay said, that's so 60s, it's stupid. Craven refused to have Freddy in the driver's seat, and we thought up about 5 different endings. The one we used with Freddy pulling the mother through the doorway amused us all so much we couldn't not use it.
Okay.
So they sort of combined all their ideas, and it's the ending scene's sort of a mess.
It is it's a little silly and hokey.
The way she gets pulled through the door is really funny.
Yeah.
Looking. She looks like a balloon when she gets pulled through the door, like a balloon animal.
Well, what's also kind of weird is that Freddy isn't represented in other places and objects throughout the whole movie. It's Freddy. He's there or he's not.
You mean in his form?
Yeah.
That's not true.
Where is he?
When she's in the going with the hall monitor, remember? When she's going.
Oh yeah.
When she's going to the boiler
all right.
room.
I guess you're right.
Yeah.
But I still think that the
Freddy as a car is hokey.
Freddy as a car is kind of dumb.
But you love the top. That's the red and green.
It is funny. What I do kind of like about the ending as it's set is that you're kind of like, well, what was a dream? What wasn't a dream?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. What's reality? What's not? I like that it's kind of flows back and forth because that's kind of when you're dreaming, that's kind of what it's like.
Yeah.
You don't realize that you're not awake.
Yeah. And that kind of answers my question, where did she get that big sledgehammer? It's a dream.
It's a dream.
That part's a dream too.
Yeah.
The gasoline's a dream. Him on fire in the basement's a dream. I don't know how it resolves in the second movie, because Nancy's in. I don't think she's in the second one, but she's in the third one.
Yeah. So
she doesn't die here.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't matter.
No, well, I'm just wondering how they resolve it.
Yeah, right. I don't know either. So that was a really good summary of a really, really good movie.
Did I miss anything? There was some more there was some more with like Marge and Nancy.
I mean, that's a very special episode kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
Where it's like Marge has a drinking issue.
Yeah.
And her and Nancy struggle with that. That could have been like a movie of the week in the 80s. I do kind of
Lifetime special.
Yeah, I do like that they try to add a little bit of grounding to it, and this idea that the parents are kind of villains.
There's so much. I read a lot about that.
It's interesting because the parents are the ones who killed Freddy in real life, even though they don't really go into super detail about it.
Right.
But they also are sort of villains in these teens' lives as well. And I like that idea that, you've got this obvious horror villain, but in our own lives, there are people that seem like they're supposed to be helpful and fine and whatever, but they're the true villain. I like that.
I don't remember if it was Englund or Craven, but one of them referred to Freddy as a corrupted father figure. Craven also said that the notion of the screenplay is that the sins of the parents are visited upon the children. But the fact that each child is not necessarily stuck with their lot is still there. Because Englund said that in Nightmare, all the adults are damaged. They're alcoholics, they're on pills, they're not around. Marge, Ronnie Blakely, who played Marge, said the parents in the film verge on being villains. Englund adds that the adolescents have to wade through that. And Heather, he never calls her Nancy, he calls her Heather, is the last girl standing. She lives, she defeats Freddy. And Langenkamp agrees. She says that Nightmare is a feminist movie, but I look at it more as a youth power film.
Yeah, I agree with both of that. They're saying.
There's also an interesting thing that I caught from another article that I read that basically said that each teenager's death is sort of tied to how little their parents are in their lives. So like Tina's death occurs. Her dad is gone 10 years prior, they said.
Yep.
And her mom was in Vegas with her boyfriend, so no one was home. The latchkey kid dies first because there was nobody around, whatever. Rod doesn't seem to have parents at all, but he's at least under like police custody.
Yeah.
So that's like a watchful eye in some way.
Yeah.
And like sort of as a stand-in for organic parents. And he dies next. We see Glenn's parents working as a team, but they're like kind of dismissive and they don't really understand or try to understand Glenn's relationship with Nancy. They just forbid him to, from talking to her, and then he dies. Nancy's parents are both involved and interested in helping her, though she clearly has a closer relationship with her mom. Regardless of the tension that they have there, clearly there's more of a connection. Her dad says after Rod's funeral that she should stay home from school until she gets over her shock, but her mom is the one who takes matters into her own hands and says, "I'm getting the sleep study done. Like we got to proactively, start to try to fix this." By the end, Marge sort of succumbs to her alcoholism in that scene, and Don doesn't listen to her pleas when she asks him to, try to grab Freddy when she pulls him into the real world, which basically means that Nancy has to grow up by herself, which she does. She has that support from her parents to a degree, but she has to do the thing herself. She has to face her fears herself, and it's really what helps her use the dream skills.
I like that.
And is able to kill Freddy.
So smart.
In that dream, anyway.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned right at the beginning when we were watching the movie was at the beginning credits, it's an introducing Johnny Depp.
Sometimes they get it right.
Which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't think of him as like,
somebody they thought was going to be a big
Yeah. I he was great in the movie, but I thought, wow, they got it right on the first try there. And I wanted to know if you knew any like first roles or introducings. I know that Steven Soderbergh does it as a joke.
Yes.
He in Ocean's 11, he said introducing Julia Roberts.
Right.
Very funny. In Logan Lucky, it was introducing Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
And he did it introducing Julia Roberts as Tess.
Yeah, because there's a scene in Ocean's 12 where Tess, who Julia Roberts plays Tess pretends to be Julia Roberts for like a scam.
That's the only good thing about Ocean's 12, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ocean's 12 is not good.
And I am going to ask you, because you looked it up and saw a bunch of introducings.
Yes.
I, though, have a great first film for somebody.
Okay.
Alan Rickman's first film was Die Hard.
Really?
Yes.
He's amazing in Die Hard.
Yeah, and he's older.
He's iconic in Die Hard.
Yeah. That was Hans Gruber was his first role. is what I saw on the internet, which is always right.
So I've got a few of them. I've got Peter O'Toole in Lawrence of Arabia.
Wow. Yeah.
Cameron Diaz in The Mask.
Yeah.
These are all people that were introducing in the cast as introducing.
Yeah, which is a great old school thing that I wish was done more.
John Travolta in Carrie.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
In the trailer for Carrie.
Okay.
So it could have been done after the fact.
Yeah.
Peter Ostrom and Willy Wonka, who never did another movie.
Nope.
Which is awesome.
New Jersey's own.
Yes. Kirsten Dunst in Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
Where she's like 9 years old playing like a creepy vampire.
Yeah, it's curly hair.
Lindsay Lohan in The Parent Trap.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Rachel Zegler in West Side Story 2021.
Yeah.
So they do it sometimes. Spielberg is an old school guy. Mr. T in Rocky 3.
Love.
That's amazing. And another one I have that's joking was in Machete Kills. They introduced Charlie Sheen as introducing Carlos Estevez.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah, this one was a big introducing.
Do you know who got Johnny Depp? Not necessarily this role, but got him an agent.
Yes, it was his
wife's friend, Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. There you go. It's interesting. Like all of the biggies, I feel like horror movies have one big like breakout star. Like Halloween was Jamie Lee Curtis's first movie. And then Friday the 13th had young Kevin Bacon.
Right.
Carrie had John Travolta. Leprechaun had Jennifer Aniston. Yes. You know, like there's tons of these horror movies that launched young people's careers.
Yeah.
And they ended up being like huge stars.
Yeah, he actually got this role because Wes Craven said that his daughters were looking through the headshots.
And they were like, ooh, I like him.
They were like, this guy's like really dreamy. And one of them threatened to run away from home if Wes didn't cast him.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Wes Craven likes to add a little bit of like panache to his stories. So I don't know how true that is, but.
I do love the idea that horror, which is, I think, often seen as a throwaway genre.
Yeah.
Really isn't. And it launches careers. It can be so well done.
A good horror movie is to me is more creative than any. Like if you're still in like say 2022 able to make a horror movie that scares people and like legitimately scares people, and you know I don't want to cheapen jump scares, but like doesn't just rely on jump scares because this movie doesn't. You have done something that a lot of people have failed at doing.
I am someone who always said I didn't like horror movies, but I really like a lot of horror movies. And even nowadays, the ones that are really well done are so good. There's some really great auteurs of horror nowadays. And if you think about it, when you think of people that are considered auteurs, a lot of them did dabble or do more into horror. Even back to Hitchcock, he did Psycho and a lot of The Birds, a lot of horror.
He's a horror legend.
And nowadays,
even like Rear Window is him, right?
Yeah,
that I would count that as a horror. It's close enough to a horror movie.
And nowadays you have your Jordan Peele, your Ari Aster, Robert Eggers is kind of horror adjacent. No, I guess he is. The Witch is.
Which is horror.
It's considered horror. Well, it was marketed as horror, and then people went to see it and got really mad. Yeah. Because it's it's not like that.
James Wan is not necessarily an auteur, and he's not specifically horror, but he's done Saw. He's done, what was it, Insidious we just talked about a little while ago in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, he also did like Furious 7 and Aquaman, but like he's done some horror stuff too.
Yeah. So I think I'm actually kind of a horror fan, which is cool. So some of the dream sequences in particular reminded me of Stranger Things.
Okay,
I don't know if you felt that.
I'm sure that's intentional.
I'm sure that Stranger Things, now, I have not seen the latest season with Vecna, so I can't base it on that, although that probably would be similar in the dream sequences and stuff like that. But everything that's sort of the upside down and that other world, very similar to me to those death scenes.
Well, there's a lot of setting a horror movie in a dream, like coming up with this concept. It's chilling. It's perfect. Like you can't not sleep.
Yeah, it's so genius.
It's unavoidable, and in a dream, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Like, you're suddenly slower, or you see weird stuff, like there's sheep in one of the things randomly in a boiler room. Like, you're just
really can't control things. Yeah.
Unless you harness it and, like, purposely know how to control it.
Right.
But, like, 99.999% of people, everybody who isn't freaking Nancy doesn't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. There are some legit scary scenes in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Right? What are some of the scariest movie scenes that you've seen?
That's not fair. You didn't do this.
I didn't prep you.
Yeah.
You don't have any off the top of your head that you're like, that was...
You do, so go ahead.
Why? What are mine?
I don't know. Talk about a couple.
Well...
And I'll try to think of...
Let's see. I can always talk about my Midsummer trauma.
Yeah.
So Midsummer is a horror movie by Ari Aster. It's kind of marketed as a horror movie that takes place in the daytime. And it is. That's most of the movie. And it's Florence Pugh in a major breakout role for her. And she goes to, where, Finland? Sweden with her boyfriend and a bunch of other friends for the Midsummer ceremony festival in this village.
Yeah.
And it was after her sister and her parents died. It was in a murder-suicide perpetrated by her sister. And that's the scene that messed me up for months. Yeah. I was having panic attacks for months after watching that movie for that scene alone, which honestly was not violent in a traditional sense. No. But truly messed me up. Like, Ari Aster... like, very, very good at what he does. Yeah. Because a true horror film to me, in its kind of most base sense, is one that is disturbing more than scary.
I agree.
And that disturbed me to no end. And the rest of the movie is truly disturbing, even though most of it takes place in the daytime. There's not jump scares, really. Maybe one or two.
Well, not major one.
But the opening scene in Midsummer is definitely one of my scariest ones. The Exorcist is also a terrifying movie. I mean, pick and choose for scariest scene. Anything where Reagan is being, is kind of possessed and is talking. Yeah. I was shocked by the language used. Yeah. In the 70s. Although 70s movies are kind of wallin'. Like, they're all over the place. Like, you could have done whatever you wanted in the 70s, I think. But still, as like a 13-year-old watching that movie, where the lore of that movie is that, back in the day when it was shown in theaters, people were passing out. They were throwing up in the theater. They were running terrified away. And I just love that idea of having that visceral reaction to a movie.
A lot of it, too, was more Christian. Like, society was more Christian back then.
Yes. So it was seen as a true possession. Like, you almost were committing heresy by watching this. Right. And I thought that it was so scary. It really holds up as a truly scary movie. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street is not that scary. I had no problems watching it. The Exorcist is truly scary. Yeah. What else? Do you have one?
Well, I mean, you mentioned those two. There's also
I have one more.
Go for it.
When I saw The Strangers in theaters, that movie was so scary. And for me, the scariest thing is right at, like, near the end, where Liv Tyler, who's excellent in that movie.
Good in The Leftovers, too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let me give you the background of it. Basically, her and her boyfriend, fiance, husband, whatever, they go to a cabin. It's in the woods. Sure. And they just are like enjoying their time. It's like a vacation. And then this guy comes to the door. There's three of them, is at the door and asks a question, but you can't really see his face. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, that was weird. It's kind of like,
the one where they wear masks or something?
Yes. Yeah. And then turns out 3 of them wearing masks come in and terrorize the couple. And at the end, spoilers, she like is tied to a chair. They just killed her boyfriend. And she's like, why are you doing this? Why? And the answer is because you were home. That's the answer. That's the reason.
We would be killed immediately. We're always home.
We're always home. And think of it like, also, I watched it back in like 2009, 2010, whenever it came out, 2008. But like pandemic, everybody's home.
Yes.
That would be not good.
Yes.
But just that idea, that's also, I think, where horror lives in its truest sense, is in this idea
Relatability.
of like, relatability. You can't help being home.
Yeah.
Like you're at your house. It just is what it is. And it being random and chosen, that's something that is not usually the case. Usually crimes are perpetrated by people that you know.
Yeah.
But
and have a specific motive.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that there is no motive, there's no background, it's just because they were home. That just shook me to my core. All right, go ahead. Your turn.
The Omen, when the nanny.
It's all for you, Damien.
Yeah. Yeah. And she jumps off the building or whatever.
That is so scary for like a 6-year-old child. I'm like, girl, really?
Yeah, relax.
Like, put on Coco Melon for the kid. It's fine. He just wants to watch Bluey.
Exactly. Yes. Damien's definitely a Bluey guy.
Damien? Yeah. Do you think Damien likes Peppa Pig, Bluey, Paw Patrol? What do you think?
Probably Paw Patrol,
You think
actually.
of Paw Patrol? He likes Chase from Paw Patrol.
Yeah.
That's the only character I know. I don't actually know any of the other.
I don't either. You know what's not from a horror movie, but is a really, really tense and scary scene?
What?
The scene in Zodiac when Jake Gyllenhaal's like in the basement with the guy.
Yeah.
Might be the killer.
That scene is so good.
That is not a horror movie.
At being tense.
Yeah.
And setting a tone, and you're just like,
is this guy the murderer?
In the world. Yeah. Even though you know that he's going to be fine.
You know he's going to be fine, and you know that you're not going to find out who the killer is.
Right.
Because that's the Zodiac killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Those are 2 that came to mind.
I love that.
Yeah.
Also, like American Horror Story season 2.
I stopped after season 1. That crap was
season
garbage.
2 was absolutely terrifying, and I'm just like, I couldn't do it. I don't watch anymore. It's just not for me. I think that some of...
Was that the clown one?
No.
First clown one?
No, that was Carnival or something.
Yeah, I don't know what order they were in.
I watched part of that and I didn't like it. This was the one that was the Asylum.
Oh, okay.
Jessica Lange is really good, and Sarah Paulson's really good, and Evan Peters. They do have a good cast. But there were some really hardcore scenes in there that were truly terrifying. Okay. So I said very relatable that Nancy would fall asleep while listening to a classmate reading Shakespeare in class, like in a monotone, not really good voice.
Yes.
Although it was about dreams.
It was
so
about
it
dreams.
Did
It was
connect.
Hamlet, I think.
Julius Caesar, I think.
Oh.
Okay, I have another kind of horror world question.
Okay.
Who is, and don't think about the world, think about the person or being themselves. Who is the scariest horror movie villain? You could go with the top 3. I personally think the big 3 are Michael Myers, Freddy, and Jason, right?
Okay.
Would you say that those are the big 3?
Yes.
Of course, we can talk about Chucky. We could talk about Pennywise,
Leatherface.
Jigsaw, Leatherface, whoever you want. Who is
Frankenstein?
Anybody?
Frankenstein's monster. Sorry.
Creature. We don't like to put a negative spin on him. It's not his fault. He was created. Who's the scariest movie villain?
It's gotta be Freddy.
You think it's Freddy?
It's Freddy. You know why?
Why?
Because he's feeling himself. You know?
Yeah.
Like Freddy's out there. Like, first of all, he's in your dreams, which you cannot. You have to when you're talking about.
All right.
When you're talking about a monster,
Yeah.
you have to take their powers into consideration.
Okay.
Freddy is in your freaking dreams.
Yeah.
You're this burnt up dude who by the way, his thing is that he kills kids. Like, this guy's down to do whatever.
Yeah.
He's going to do whatever. He's going to make you think whatever. He's screwing with your head as he's killing you.
Yeah. That is pretty scary.
I don't know if there's anything scarier than that.
Yeah.
And he loves himself.
Yeah.
Like, especially in the sequels, he's making jokes.
Yeah.
You know? He's not like a faceless monster with a mask that's walking around and won't stop falling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not a little doll that you could burn up in a furnace. Like, well, I guess he did get burned up in a furnace, but you know what I mean? Like, Chucky gets like melted in like half the movies. Like,
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
It's got to be Freddy. I don't think I legitimately don't see a case for anybody else.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe Pennywise.
Pennywise is really scary. Number one, he's a clown. Number two,
But
he's
not
actually an alien.
Yeah. He takes the form of a
Yeah, but he takes the form of a clown.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying. He also, you think that he's gone, but he's not. Like, he comes back when they're adults.
Yeah.
That's really scary.
He's a very similar monster to Freddy.
He also eats kids.
He eats kids and he thrives off of fear, which is exactly what Freddy thrives off.
He also, I think something that's, Freddy obviously takes different forms too, but like that's Pennywise's thing.
Yeah.
Like he ends up taking the form of like the kids he eats.
He is a shape-shifting alien.
That's so scary.
What about The Thing?
Yeah, The Thing's scary.
Thing is a good one too.
The Thing is a good one.
The Thing.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it.
Yeah. That's a really good movie.
Also a shapeshifter, but the way they frame it in the movie, the 1982 movie, which is John Carpenter and Kurt Russell's the lead, is it's a bunch of these guys that are in like a research facility in Antarctica. So it's total isolation. And there's this thing that is this creature down there that is, you never see it, I don't think. It just takes the form of other things. Mm-hmm. And it takes the form of, there's a point where it takes the form of one of the guys.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is trying to figure out who is the thing and what is the thing and how to kill the thing. Yeah. And it's such a psychological, cerebral horror movie. It's awesome. I cannot recommend The Thing enough. It's one of my favorites.
Hannibal Lecter's pretty scary, but not
he's a dude.
as much.
He's a dude.
He's a guy. I think he's scarier more because he's a person that just does these things.
Yeah. If we're talking monsters, though, Hannibal's not top 5.
Jigsaw's kind of scary.
But again, he's a guy. He's actually a couple people. But
I think of him as the like clown guy.
Oh, the clown? Yeah, that was scary.
But think about Jigsaw, like it's from the movies. Saw. Where you wake up in a room and like you have to do stuff to not die, like cut off your leg and whatever. But do you know what I think of when I think of Saw?
What?
Scary movie where it's Shaq and Dr. Phil.
No, I forgot about that.
One of them, I think it's Shaq, he accidentally cuts off the wrong leg.
Oh, no.
And then realizes that you just cut off his regular leg, not the one that was attached to the wall.
We got to do all the scary movies.
It's so dumb. So, yeah, I only saw Saw 2.
Okay.
Which was good. I liked it.
1 and 2 are good. They sort of get progressively. I stopped around 5.
Is there isn't there like a Jigsaw origin story?
There is.
Movie?
No. Yeah, something like that. Like Chris Rock was in it, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, Chris Rock was in like the most recent one.
That's cool.
As like the detective.
I like that.
Yeah.
There's so many horror movies that are out there too that like we don't even...
Yeah, like I've never seen any of like the Annabelle movies, the Conjuring movies.
Conjuring movies we didn't watch. Insidious we didn't watch.
No.
The Babadook.
Unfortunately.
The LGBT icon, the Babadook. Which if you don't know about that background, it's genius. So Netflix... I don't know if it's a Netflix movie, but the Babadook was out on Netflix and it was for some reason, it was classified under LGBT movies, which is not a theme in the Babadook at all. Women director though. Hey.
Yeah.
And so the whole joke is that the B in LGBT stands for Babadook. And like the Babadook is like this LGBT icon, which is just so funny.
You haven't seen any of these movies, but would you consider The Predator like a horror villain?
I mean, why not? Yeah, sure.
I see it as more of an action. I don't know.
How about the shark from Jaws? He's not that scary. Just stay out of the water.
He's a shark, yeah. I mean, he might chase you to Florida like he did in Jaws 3, The Revenge, but that is what it is.
You know, what else is there? I'm trying to think of like what other horror franchises. Alien, okay, really. Boring.
I mean, if I was in
the movie's not boring, but in space, no one can hear you scream.
Yeah.
What about blah, 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 blah.
The Mummy?
That's not horror. That's action. And then Poltergeist is its own thing.
Yes.
That's just ghost. They're not that scary. So yeah, well,
it's gotta be Freddy.
Why is Freddy scarier than Jason and Michael Myers?
He's got swag.
First of all, Jason isn't even the villain in the first Friday the 13th.
He's the villain in all the other ones.
He is. And so he's
well, if you listen to our Scream episode, you would know that already.
Yes. Michael Myers is kind of scary.
He is scary. They're all scary.
Yeah, they are all
scary.
But
Freddy's gonna taunt you as he's killing you.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
All right.
Freddy's like, he's got a nursery rhyme. Do any of these other dudes have nursery rhymes? Maybe, probably.
Probably, but not that I know of. Not off the top of my head.
Chucky's really scary too.
Chucky. I've never seen any Child's Play movies.
The first couple are scary. After that, they get
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said in here that there was such a specific bad boy look in the 80s.
Johnny Depp look?
The Johnny Depp, but he
or
didn't
Rod.
even, no,
Talking about Rod.
I said
the leather
the
jacket.
boyfriend Rod and Charlie Sheen and Ferris Bueller look so similar.
Rod's like a mix of Charlie Sheen and Ferris Bueller and John Travolta in Grease.
I will say this, though. I felt kind of bad afterwards because after I wrote that down, it was specifically in the scene where he's in jail talking to Nancy, right?
Right.
And then I looked it up. He was like going through drug withdrawal.
Oh, I knew that.
During that scene. And so I felt bad. I was like, ooh.
Heather Langenkamp she was like, I thought he was just acting really well.
Yeah, no, he was going through it.
Yeah.
So then I was like, that sucks.
Yeah.
I can't really. Although in Ferris Bueller, it's like, oh, what are you in here for? And he's like, drugs. And then the sister's like, no, what are you in here for? And he said, drugs. So I guess it does kind of check out. Right. What would you do to help stay awake? Anything.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have the courage to do what Nancy did. Nancy's nuts.
Nancy is nuts.
Nancy, I wrote like 3 or 4 times when I was watching this movie. Nancy is wild.
Yeah. Do you know what I would do to stay awake? I would think of like a time where like, I don't know, my sophomore year in high school where I said something embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I wondered if someone was mad at me. And just think about that, and then I would never sleep.
But you know what the stupid thing is? A lot of times I don't sleep very well generally, but the times where I don't want to sleep, when it's like 2:30 p.m. and I'm at work, that's when I'm the most tired.
Yeah,
I would get killed during like a work nap.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean? Like I would get killed during my evening. I'm going to sleep for 30 minutes before I eat dinner kind of thing. Like that's when I would die.
I would probably like to stay awake. I would like make it Christmas Eve where like you don't like you want to go to sleep, but like, you can't because you're so excited. And then I would think of something that like I said that made me really uncomfortable. And I was like, oh my God. And then I would wonder if I paid my if I have home insurance, like something that you're just like, wait, where's the paperwork? I would like wonder where my driver's license is.
Right.
Like stuff like that. And I think that if you do those things, you would never fall asleep.
You'd have to come up with like a list of those things forever.
Until
somebody kills Freddy.
You just choose one thing a night. Like, it's like, okay, which teacher was mad at you?
Yeah.
And do you think that teacher is still mad at you? And you just worry about that all night. And then the next night you think like, oh my gosh, like, is my dental insurance up to date?
Yeah.
And then you just think about that forever. And then you think like, oh my God, what do I need to do to make sure that I can make a return? And then you just worry about that.
And then you just hope that somebody kills Freddy in the meantime.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that just goes on and on and on. You'll never sleep again.
Well, yeah, but if somebody else kills Freddy, it's fine. You don't have to.
Yeah, that's true. Or
you could sleep.
You know what I would do? I would move. It's a Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. all the kids lived on the street, maybe. I mean, Glenn
I know
did.
that
We
Glenn
know Glenn
did. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the concept of the movie?
Sure.
Because we didn't. Do you have any more questions?
No, the last thing that I wanted to say was actually about the title, A Nightmare on Elm Street.
We can lead into it from that.
I said that it kind of feels like a tiny little thing, right? One nightmare on one small street. And I love that. I love the article at the beginning. A nightmare.
Well,
one singular thing. I just think that is so genius because so much can expand out from there.
Yeah, and
right?
there's so many Elm Streets. Elm Street could be anywhere. The whole thing, Wes Craven's whole thing.
Oh!
Wes Craven's whole thing is we went through in Scream, and he also did The Last House on the Left, is like suburban terror.
Yeah, I love that.
Like where you feel the safest, you're actually in the most danger.
I think that's so genius, and I love movies with that kind of concept. So I love that.
Yeah, so he actually, we talked about this before, but he came up with the basic idea for the movie. It was from sort of over a couple of years. He saw these articles in the LA Times about a group of Southeast Asian refugees.
Yeah, this is wild.
Who came to the U.S. to escape the reign of Pol Pot in like Cambodia, I think.
Yeah.
And they all died during nightmares. Like they didn't die of heart attacks or anything like that. They died of like in their nightmares, like they don't know what it was called. So, in the autopsy results said, they didn't die from exhaustion, they didn't die from starvation, they didn't die from heart failure. So they called it Asian death syndrome, which is a variant of sudden unexpected death syndrome, which is crazy.
It is crazy. I wonder, because they were refugees, right? I know that I follow a couple of like Instagrams now. Of course, I would never like compare people to dogs, but there's a few people I follow that do dog rescues, and one of the rescues that they just did, there was a dog that died when like the night after they were rescued, and they said that that's something that occasionally happens because when they're on survival mode, their adrenaline is super high.
Just like overloads.
And then when they feel comfortable and safe and they don't have to be in survival mode,
it's the opposite.
It kind of, they crash and like stuff starts shutting down because all the problems that they had were covered by that adrenaline.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's humans are a different
of course. No,
and all
totally
that.
different.
So, but I wonder if there's something to be said for that where, when you're in the midst of survival mode, like other things don't happen yet until you feel comfortable and more safe.
And then you have these nightmares.
Yeah, I really, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so that's where the idea of the movie came from, but the actual concept of Freddy himself came from a variety of sources in Wes Craven's childhood. So Fred Krueger was a schoolmate of his.
That guy probably is like, what the heck?
Well, in The Last House on the Left, the villain's name was Krug.
I know.
Also.
Yeah. Well, that's more subtle.
Yeah. You're right. He was a guy that had bullied Craven for a couple of years, and they shared a paper route together.
Oh, wow. That's very suburban.
Yes. So that's where the idea of the name came from. His burns. So obviously, you know what Freddy Krueger looks like. His face is all burned up and all that.
Scary.
Craven just saw a guy that looked like that once as a child. No, probably not exactly like that. Once as a child and was like, oh, that's terrifying. Like, that guy is wild. And
which is sad because most people that
are going through some stuff.
They've had awful things happen to them and are not evil and are not scary.
The guy who's the producer, whose name I already forgot, he said that he got the idea for the design one day while he was like racking his brain over it, and he was literally just eating pepperoni pizza, and he looked at it and he was like, it's got to look like this.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes.
I did see that they just did the red and white striped sweater, red and green striped sweater, because those are imagine it's like, where's Waldo? Because the red, like the corneas, it's like the most clashing colors.
Yes, to the retina.
To the retina. There you go.
Yep. Also, there was a guy, Freddy's attire, like the clothes and the hat and all that stuff, was inspired by a guy that Craven, when he was 10 years old, saw staring at him through his window at night.
Ew, what? He
said that the guy noticed him. He said he was probably like a homeless man or something, but he doesn't know.
Yeah.
He said that the guy noticed him and was like trying to scare him and was like staring at him as he was walking away.
Like as a joke?
Maybe. He walked towards the entrance of his building, and Wes was like screaming, and so he was like, the way it was you can't see the entrance to the building, but he saw that he was walking to that direction, so that when he left his view from the window, Wes started like screaming and waking everybody up and everything, and his brother went downstairs with a baseball bat.
Yeah, no duh.
And by the time everybody was awake and all the alarms were, not the actual alarms, but like the figurative alarms were going off in everybody's heads, he was gone. Never found him.
So creepy!
He said that guy became the essence of Freddy because that guy, whoever he was, enjoyed scaring the crap out of a child.
Love that.
He said, extrapolating that and taking it to the nth degree, I think you have the kind of mentality of older men that can send younger men off to war, or a generation that always hates the music of a younger generation because it's threatening to them, because they're the ones inheriting new life and the older generation is inheriting old age.
I feel like that, it's very profound, actually. And it's also a major theme in a lot of horror movies.
Yeah.
Like the fact that older people do not understand the youth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
He also said that, this was Robert Englund said this. His portrayal of the character had a little bit of a different twist on it. Mm-hmm. He said that in his mind, the backstory for Freddy was based on something from his own childhood. So it was so stupid. on Valentine's Day when he was in school, everyone makes Valentine's cards for each other. And there was one kid in one of his classes that received no cards from anyone ever.
Oh my God.
So Englund theorized that this kid went on to become Freddy.
Hey, whatever works.
And in various interviews, he talks about Freddy's like walk and mannerisms. What he said when he put on the fedora, he thought of old gangster movies, like James Cagney stuff.
Sure.
And he wanted to give Freddy like that kind of swagger.
I love that.
Also, the glove was real. The glove had like real metal knives in it. There's a stunt glove too that had safety. Like when he's slashing people, it's fake knives. But when he's walking around with it, it's real knives. And it was so heavy that he ended up like unintentionally dropping his right shoulder. So he has like that kind of like
I noticed that kind of
lean to him.
Yeah.
He equated that with a gunslinger who has his pistol and his holster on his hip.
Yeah. Okay.
So in conjunction with that, the way that he was walking, because of his posture, he tried to make it almost as if he was surfing, which is a weird.
Okay.
If you watch an interview with Robert Englund, he's like a blonde dude. Like he's from LA. He's definitely surfed a lot in his life. He said it was very fun to mix when you have your Halloween that had just come out a couple of years prior, 6 years prior. Mm-hmm. Friday the 13th had just come out.
Yeah.
A lot of these killers were silent and hulking and monsters.
Slow.
Yeah. Englund said that it was fun to mix a sadistic element with like a vaudeville clown element.
I agree.
And that is exactly what Freddy is.
Yeah.
He's got that one scene where his like limbs are really long.
Yeah.
And when you're in a dream, that's something that
is terrifying.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
He said this is probably the reason why he was never replaced.
Yeah.
He was like, Wes Craven just liked the way I did stuff like that.
Sure.
And for the glove, Craven said that he wanted something ancient that had been around forever. He wanted something terrifying that's been terrifying since the beginning. He wanted an edged weapon because that's the most ancient. But he wanted to combine it with something that was the epitome of mankind, the human hand.
Ah.
So he wanted something that was not a machete or not a, what does Michael Myers use?
I don't know.
A bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But most of the stuff had been edged weapons already, so he wanted to take that and combine it with the human hand.
It kind of reminded me of, I mean, obviously, of, what's his name from X-Men? Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he uses his powers for good. Imagine
Sometimes.
Wolverine versus Freddy.
I can guarantee that we should go on YouTube and guarantee there's some like video
weird
about
fan fiction, horror movie kind of action thing. That would be so cool. Who would win? Who would win in a fight between Wolverine and Freddy Krueger?
I don't think Wolverine would have the mental fortitude to survive his dreams. Wolverine.
Wow, yeah, Wolverine's been through some stuff in his life, right?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm sad. I'm Logan.
Yeah.
Right? Which Logan is kind of like, I don't know, like a Chad name.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think of a tortured soul Wolverine as Logan.
Well, that's why Wolverine's great.
Yeah, I guess. I
think Freddy would get him.
You think Freddy would get Wolverine?
I do. He might not agree, but.
Do you agree?
One more thing that just sort of shows where Wes Craven's mind is at. And like, when you think of horror, you think of like, and you watch this movie, you think like, oh, you know, there's these like stupid scenes, and the acting is kind of hammy and like all this stuff. But like, there's a lot going on here. Wes Craven said that he decided to make his lair the boiler room because it's like the Cretan labyrinth from the Daedalus and Icarus myth. And it represents like hell or Hades.
Wow.
Like there's a lot going on in this guy's brain.
I do not think
I'm not saying you in particular.
Acting as that. I don't think it's bad.
I'm not saying you in particular. I'm just saying you think of horror movies, you think of just low budget B movie stuff. I do think that
there's a B movie element to the acting.
100%.
Purposefully.
Yeah.
And it's also the 80s. Like the 80s has acting like that anyway.
Yeah.
But Heather Langenkamp, she has like 1,000-year stare.
She's amazing in this movie.
She's been through things in her life, and you can just see that, like the character, and you can see that sense of existential dread mixed with she's so young and beautiful. And I think she was like 20 at that time, but she was supposed to be 16. And she looks young. She looks like she's 15 or 16 years old. So
did you catch the line?
That beautiful youth.
Did you catch the line where she puts on whatever she was wearing and she goes,
oh my God, I look 20.
Yes.
Yeah. So good. And And I think that her performance is very layered. And I think that
she's an excellent final girl.
It's part of the reason why the movie was so successful.
100%.
And I think that you've got... she's different from a lot of other Scream queens in that she's not that scared. She's kind of like, do whatever you want. Nuts. Like, I'm gonna get you. I don't care.
I'm going into this dream multiple times.
She's not scared. She's been through it.
She's not scared at all. Like, she's scared, but she's also so hopped up on caffeine that she can't, she's like, can't be scared.
Yeah, she also, you kind of see the deterioration.
From like halfway to the end of the movie, the second half of the movie, she undergoes that change, like right like that.
Yeah. I just think about when you're so tired you just don't care anymore.
Yes, that's exactly it.
It's kind of like, remember when
she's perfect at portraying that.
Yeah, she is. Remember when I had my ear issue? Okay, so like I had a ball of wax in my ear and I didn't know what was wrong with my ear. All I knew was that I was starting to have hearing loss and I was like, what is going on? And it hurt. Like it truly hurt inside of my ear. And Tom, I don't know if you remember, I was in the living room and I thought I was going crazy and I just stood up and I said, I have to go. Yeah. And I just drove away. I just left and drove to a doctor. Usually I'm just like, oh my God, I have to go to the doctor. And I like whine about it and I just hate it and whatever. I was just like, I'm out, goodbye. And I couldn't think of anything. I wasn't scared about what was going on. I was just like, I need to. And it's kind of like giving birth too, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, just whatever. I don't care what you have to do. Like, I don't care. I will do it. Like, I will do the epidural. I was not scared of the epidural. Huge dang needle in your back. I don't care. Do it now. Like, it's kind of like when you are that tired, you do not care. Yeah. And she did not care. Yeah. And I love that. It was portrayed so well.
Did you know that she beat over 200 actresses to get this role?
I believe that.
And 3 of the really famous ones that are
tell me.
rumored, but they've been disputed. Demi Moore.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Courtney Cox.
Okay, wow.
And 80s legend Jennifer Grey.
Jennifer Grey was, although that was before Ferris Bueller and Dirty Dancing. Yes.
Which would have made sense because they're casting people that were before their time in this movie already. So the reason why she got the role was because, well, first of all, Wes Craven wanted somebody who was a brunette. He said it's stereotypical, but he said that a brunette was more of a girl next door, especially when you think about it in the 80s. And that's the type of girl that he wanted. He wanted somebody that was not going to be overpoweringly Hollywood good looking, even though she is. But like,
now that I think of it, most of the Scream queens that we know are brunette.
Yeah. And he chose her because he just felt that she fit that the best. And he gave her the role at her audition, which she said never, ever happens. It's always, my agent will get in touch with your agent and all that. And she said every time she gets a role, I don't know, I don't really know, I'm not familiar with her other stuff, but she said the first thing I do, which reminds me of where I came from always, like, and I've done it ever since I got my first role, was I get a full tank of gas. That's what she does every time she signs on for a movie.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Because I guess she doesn't I guess when she was younger, she wasn't doing that very often, getting a full tank of gas, you know?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
That's nice. She seems like a nice lady.
She's a little nuts too from the, but in like a fun way, in like a cool way.
Yeah.
She's like way all in on
horror. I know her and her husband run like an FX. Yeah. Like horror effects makeup thing.
She and Robert Englund, in their interviews, they talk about the movie as if it were a Greek tragedy. Like, they talk, if you watch their interviews, all they talk about is good versus evil and like philosophy and all this stuff. And Robert Englund says that there's no equivocation. Like, this is good versus evil. There's no like middle ground. There's no gray area. This is good versus evil. He called it a Beauty and the Beast story as well. He was like, I don't think they want to see us get it on, but they want to see us butt heads. And they want to see, he said, it's in the most popcorn terms, a date movie. Yeah. Which is just an amazing way to put it.
It's kind of funny. It reminds me of Succession, where like, depending on which actor you talk to, it's either a comedy or a like serious drama. Yeah. And how, you know, Jeremy Strong takes it so seriously. Yes. And how it's like, it's like a Shakespearean tragedy and all this stuff. But what's his name? Roman
Kieran
Culkin thinks of it as like a really funny show that's like, don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the success of it.
Yep.
Where it's like, if you have something that is not, like horror's not taken super seriously, it's supposed to be like very satirical and you know, funny and corny and whatever.
Like what I imagine the later versions of this series are.
Yeah. But if you have people that are kind of all in and can see
the vision
and the deeper meanings to it, you get so much more successful
because
stuff.
They're clearly in line with Wes Craven. Wes Craven's talking about the labyrinth and the Greek mythology. Like they're on the same page.
Absolutely.
What you see on screen is exactly what they want you to see.
It is very obvious when there's people that are all in when it comes to movies.
Well, I have to say the last 3, since we watched Scream and now this one, Wes Craven is one of my favorite directors.
He's so great.
He is incredible. You know what's also really funny? In this movie, Nancy is watching The Evil Dead, which we talked about when it was on. It's just on TV. As she's trying to stay awake, so she's watching The Evil Dead.
Yep. Good movies, good series.
Craven wanted to include it because Raimi in The Evil Dead had a poster of The Hills Have Eyes in that movie as a jab to show audiences that The Evil Dead was scarier than The Hills Have Eyes. So later on, in Evil Dead 2, Freddy's glove is in the background on the scene.
So cool.
But when Wes Craven loaned the glove to the set of Dream Warriors, because I don't think he was really involved in that one, which was the third one, it got lost. But Sam Raimi put the glove in one of the episodes of Ash vs. Evil Dead, which is a series that was just on Starz a few years ago after Wes Craven died as like a...
homage to him.
Yeah. So they had a little bit of a rivalry between those two.
I did think of when Evil Dead was on that Nancy was watching, it reminded me of Scream. Wes Craven, when they're all watching Halloween. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting that he does that, where he's always in the horror universe. In the horror universe. And
obviously you had Freddy versus Jason, like he combined universes at one point.
I gotta watch Last House on the Left.
That was Hills Have Eyes.
And Hills Have Eyes is like, I know that they remade that. It's like really, it's kind of like people that live in
like the middle of nowhere.
That are like creepy and stuff. Yeah. I don't know if I like that. Last House on the Left, they remade too, I think.
They did.
Yeah. Why are we doing this?
His big 3 are Elm Street, Scream, and Last House on the Left.
But Hills Have Eyes, I know, came out in like the mid-2000s, the remake. Was he involved in any of those remakes?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
When did he die?
2017, 16?
Okay. R.I.P.
Yeah.
To a legend.
Seriously. I wish I was like more appreciative of him when he was alive.
Yeah. But my thing is like now
2015, he died.
2015. Now, and when was Hills Have Eyes, the remake?
Go ahead. Okay. I'll find it.
When I know that people are always like, they remake everything nowadays. There's no original things in Hollywood and blah, blah, blah. And I hate that. I fight against that so strong. But when you think about remakes in horror, are there that many good ones?
They gave him a producer credit on the remake.
Okay. Which came out in what year?
2006.
Okay. But think about it. Are there any horror remakes that were like really, really, really well done?
No.
I really can't think of any.
Very rare. Some people are like, oh, I liked that one. Like every now and then, you know, but never like, oh, that was as good as the original.
And I like now the new thing of continuing series.
Yeah.
Like Halloween's doing. Like
Halloween
Jamie
Kills.
Lee Curtis is still in it. Although I did see on
Halloween
Wikipedia,
Ends? What is it?
Halloween Ends is coming out.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be the last one. But I saw that one is the ones, okay, so there was Halloween in the early, like the 70s, right?
78.
And then there were a bunch of different sequels.
Mm-hmm.
They do not count any of the sequels for the new Halloweens. So then they did Halloween in 2018. That's considered a continuation from the original.
That's essentially Halloween 2.
Yes.
Okay.
And then they build from that.
Got it.
So it's kind of like it drops off after the first one into its own timeline.
So they're disclaiming Busta Rhymes and Halloween Resurrection.
I think so.
That is, okay. I have mixed feelings on that.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how they do it with Scream. My guess is that the Scream ones are just a continuation.
No, I think they are.
The characters are still in it.
Yeah, I think they are.
I like that. I like a continuation of a series. I think that's interesting and cool. Top Gun Maverick, right, does that with Top Gun if we're talking outside of the genre. But I don't love just like, oh, we're just going to do it again.
We're going to remake The Omen with Julia Stiles.
Yeah. Yeah, even though that came out
6606,
which is so cool.
Amazing, great marketing.
Why do we know this stuff?
I saw it in theaters.
So yeah, I am team shut up about, they don't make anything original in Hollywood anymore. But I'm also team, do we need to remake every classic horror movie? I don't think of any, that there's been any good ones.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
You know what they did?
It was good.
It was good. I liked that, which was originally a miniseries.
Technically not a movie the first time.
Technically not a movie, so I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
We recast stuff every time. We recasted Misery.
Yeah. And here's my thing, though. I would be okay if, let's say they redid Misery, but it was based on the play.
Okay.
You know? They're doing that with Matilda. So Matilda originally it's not horror, but originally was a book by Roald Dahl, right?
There's some creepy parts of Matilda.
It is creepy. Then they did a movie. The movie is not very similar to the book.
Yeah.
Then they did a musical. The musical is very similar to the book. Now they're doing a movie based on the musical.
Okay, sure.
I kind of like that because it's something a little bit different.
Yeah.
It takes the same ideas, but it's a different interpretation on that. You can even go with that with our Willy Wonka, which if you haven't listened to our Willy Wonka episode, do that. Where the remake of the movie, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which they considered a closer adaptation of the book.
Yeah.
And a little bit different from the original movie. I like that. It's sort of like you're taking the work and interpreting it differently. With Shakespeare, they do that all the time, right? You have tons of remakes to Shakespeare plays and adaptations and blah, blah, blah. But Shakespeare, he made his work specifically without tons of stage directions and settings and all of that, so that it could be adapted in many different ways.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that. But what I
Thanks, Bill.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Bill. Or Chris Marlowe or whatever, whoever you are. But I don't like just a flat out horror remake where it's the same exact movie just with an updated cast.
The Omen was basically shot for shot.
Yeah, I don't need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to talk a little bit about the special effects.
Yeah, do it.
Because this is a very unique movie when it comes to special effects. And I love the fact that this was done with real stuff. It was 1984. You didn't have CGI. You didn't have a lot of that computer generated stuff, which, there's a utility for that too. But I find it really fascinating when things are created and put together by humans, because it's amazing what they're able to do. So I just want to go through a couple of behind the scenes magic of what you see in A Nightmare on Elm Street. For example, there's a scene early in the movie where Nancy is sleeping and you see her in the bed, and then the top half of the screen is her ceiling, which is slanted, and there's a crucifix there. Mm-hmm. And you see Freddy coming through the ceiling. You see his hands and his face sort of pulling through the ceiling. That was just spandex. That was pretty cool. They did it. It wasn't a real ceiling.
That's really cool.
It's a really, really cool scene. The bath scene when he pulls her under and he drags her under the water.
Yeah.
It was in a giant tub that was 8 feet deep, and it was totally blacked out so they could make it appear endless. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Langenkamp floated on the surface while the special effects guy was below her in a scuba suit. And that's who you see. It's his body the part of his body that you see. She spent about 8 hours in the tank.
Oh my God.
Yes. What else is there? Oh, there's the scene I mentioned where Freddy's arms, he's chasing Tina, I think, in the dream, and his arms are elongated and they're sort of flopping around. He just looks really creepy in the background as a shadow.
But it's also kind of funny.
It is funny. This was achieved by having men with fishing poles on each side of the alley, and from the fishing poles, they had puppet arms attached to him that they were lifting up and down.
So cool.
Yeah.
All of this.
It reminds me of that episode of Doug where he goes to see the horror movie and you see the zipper in the back of the costume.
Yes. All of this makes me appreciate older movies so much. It's kind of like I said with Willy Wonka.
I haven't even gotten to the cool stuff yet.
I like CGI. I think what we've done with special effects is truly amazing. Those people are artists. It's wonderful. But I love the creativity.
Yeah.
That came with Willy Wonka, like we mentioned, where I didn't care that it looked grimy.
Yeah.
Here, I don't care that it doesn't look the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. And again, I didn't even get to the cool stuff.
Yeah, right.
Now we're getting to the really cool stuff. Tina's death when she gets dragged along the ceiling and all that.
Yeah, that was wild.
They did it in a rotating room, a giant structure that was a rotating room. Craven said the room had no wires, and it was just the result of vertigo and panic attack-inducing rotations, with all items nailed down. And the cameraman was strapped to an airplane seat attached to the wall.
Whoa.
And he was going up and around with it.
Wait, that reminds me. Am I crazy? Was there a ride in Six Flags that had like a rotating room?
Maybe something like that.
Like Houdini, something like that. That was crazy.
People on either side of the contraption had to move it, like flip it around and stuff.
That's so nuts.
They said it was awful. Like it was so hard
to work with.
It was chaos, but they reused it for Glenn's death.
Okay,
because
well,
that's how you get the gravity for the water.
It would be interesting upon rewatch if you notice certain things about the room.
Well, listen. Basically, it's a geyser of gallons of blood coming from a cavern in the bed. They went back to that rotating room, and because of the water and the way everything had to get drenched, they had one take to do it.
Oh my gosh.
So they flipped the room upside down. Picture it like the bed is on top.
Yeah.
The cinematographer said that when they started pouring the water down, it hit the light on the ceiling and it got electrified and it electrocuted the guy who was pouring. He was fine, but it electrocuted the guy who was pouring the water, first of all. It also, because you know how when you fill like a bottle or a tub with something, like the balance comes off?
Yeah.
The balance completely shifted. The room rolled all the way over and people had to like jump out of the way as like the cables and the ropes came out. And it poured through the window in the room because there's a window in Glenn's bedroom. And it was like drenching the operators. And once all the liquid came out, it stopped rocking. And the crew was still attached inside of it.
That's wild.
Like to the walls and stuff. They were covered for about 20 minutes in the dark in fake blood.
Oh my God.
And they got the shot. And it looks amazing.
It does look amazing. It's truly terrifying.
Yeah, they got the
crazy.
You know where they got the idea from? This is crazy.
I mean, I thought The Shining.
No.
What was it?
It was actually from a movie from 1951 called Royal Wedding.
Okay.
Where Fred Astaire dances over every square inch of a living room, including the ceiling and the walls.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
That's where they got it from.
Cool.
And it's like a 4-minute scene where he's dancing, and that's where they got the idea to make this rotating room and do that kind of stuff with it. And obviously it's used in Poltergeist as well. It was used in Inception. It's the same type of rotating
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the fighting scene.
Same type of rotating room. They've used it in a bunch of movies since.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the one that I thought was really awesome.
That is so cool.
I love that rotating room idea. If you go on YouTube, I don't know if it was the special effects guy or the cinematographer or what, but there's test footage of the contraption on YouTube.
If you could see.
You can.
That's so cool.
Not really with everything on it and in it, but a lot of it is
the basic prototype
basic idea of what it is. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that when we were watching the movie, our baby was smiling in his sleep during the ending like dream sequence.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was hanging out with like a baby version of Freddy.
Oh, can you imagine baby Freddy? Oh my God, we already have his costume. He's going to be Bart Harley Jarvis
from I Think You Should Leave,
or a biker, depending on if you like the show or not.
Yeah.
But a baby Freddy would have been so cute.
Yeah. We got plenty of time.
Year.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we've got a couple years where we could do whatever we want.
Yep.
I think that if we have a cool baby, he'll be in when it comes to like group costumes. So if like mommy and daddy are doing it, like we could be Heather, Glenn, and Freddy.
God.
I want to be Marge.
Yeah, I would be Don. I'd rather be Don than Glenn.
Don, Marge, and Freddy.
Yeah. Yeah. So does A Nightmare on Elm Street make Baby's first watch list?
Yeah.
Do you have any takeaways?
Of like things to learn.
Tell him. I got a couple.
Things to tell him. Well, you know what? No, but I will say this, Tom. We didn't do Miss Nesbitt or food.
Oh no, I know. I didn't have much for either of them.
Yeah, Miss Nesbitt. No.
Was Marge.
Marge. That's a good one. Yeah, the mom. And then food. There wasn't none. Caffeine pills and
coffee. Yeah. And alcohol.
Yeah. Although it is funny. They didn't have like little Keurigs back then. So like Nancy has like all these different like Mr. Coffee pots everywhere, which is so good. All right, so tell me your takeaways. What do you want our son to get from A Nightmare on Elm Street?
So I kind of took these from another article that I read. I think I would tell him that the fact that Nancy sort of has to literally fight back, you have to face what makes you afraid, face your fears.
Yeah.
You can't always rely on your parents, even though like Nancy's parents, better than Nancy's parents, we will like be there to the lengths to which we can be there. But sometimes in order to do it right, you got to do it yourself, and you can't outsource the inner demons to your parents.
Yeah,
you know, and that's not yet. I mean, he's got to be a lot older for that. But I think that's one of the big lessons from this movie.
I like that.
So my second one is sort of for both of us, baby and parents. This movie takes the fear of something happening to your child on one end and pairs it with the idea of growing up and the need to grow up. I didn't make this up. This is from an article I read. Both have the potential to be scary and traumatic. Ultimately, the failure of a parent to protect his or her child from the demons of the world is inevitable.
Yeah.
Sometimes unintentional mistakes are made, and sometimes the best you can do is arm your kid to fight back against the evils of the world.
Beautiful. I think that's amazing.
And I think the takeaway from that is...
Who wrote that?
Just an art. I think it was Film School Rejects or something, like one of those reviewers.
Yeah.
What I would say my takeaway from that is basically, if I'm not doing enough to arm you to fight back against the evils of the world, let me know. Keep me in the loop.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I love it. I think that's beautiful. That's perfect. So, Tom, you're about to eat some humble pie right now.
I'm about to eat some humble pie. And it's going to taste good.
Yeah. So, you put up a poll.
I did.
We gave the Babysitters Club 3 options for our next movie. Those options were Nightmare Before Christmas, Hocus Pocus, and Beetlejuice.
The Nightmare Before Christmas,
sorry.
not to be confused with A Nightmare on Elm Street.
And, Tom, you were convinced that Hocus Pocus was gonna sweep.
I'm still not sure
How this happened,
or if it's true.
Okay.
Maybe Hocus Pocus actually did win, but it did not. Next week's movie, 1984's
Oh my God.
also Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice!
Can't say it again. That's 2.
Oh my God. We love this movie.
Yes.
We like Michael Keaton King and
1988, sorry.
1988. And we are going to love watching it again.
Our baby not happy with the
I
decision.
don't know why he's mad.
Yeah, so it's Tim Burton, it's Michael Keaton, it's Winona Ryder, Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis. I'm a card-carrying member of the Gina Davis
Love
fan
Gina
club.
Davis.
If you haven't seen it, it's wacky. It's out there. It's on HBO Max. It's on Fubo. Everything's on Fubo. And it's also on something else. You can look it up if you want, or I'll have it in the description. Yeah, so Beetlejuice is awesome. We love it. It's short, I think. I don't think it's...
I think it's short.
It's probably like... I'm going to guess it's 110 minutes. Let's see. 92 minutes, baby.
Heaven.
It's also got Catherine O'Hara from Schitt's Creek.
Yes, it does. And it has one of my favorite funny little gags ever.
Yes.
It's when he's in the waiting room.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah, and like Freddy Krueger, who only appears in this movie for 7 minutes.
Wow!
Beetlejuice is another one of those characters.
In like 19 minutes or something, right?
So well known and is obviously the title of the movie, and he's you know who Beetlejuice is. He's like barely in the movie, but every second he's on screen is amazing.
He's the best. I'm so excited. Wait, can I just say I've been really loving these horror movies.
Me too.
And these
Beetlejuice isn't a horror movie. Yeah.
No, but it's a Halloweeny movie, just
Yeah.
like Shaun of the Dead is a Halloweeny movie.
Yep.
I've been really enjoying it.
This has been a great month.
really fun. And I can't wait for next October to do all these other
Yep.
ones. Because we still have, Halloween, the movie?
Yeah, which will come out on Monday, Halloween.
Anything else, or is that the
That's it.
last one? Yeah. So it'll be Beetlejuice and then Halloween.
Yes.
I'm already thinking about next year. We
I
could
know.
do Last House on the Left. We could do Friday
Exorcist,
the 13th,
Poltergeist.
Exorcist, Poltergeist, Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
Maybe The Strangers. Maybe get into
And
Paranormal Activity.
these are only the horror movies.
Maybe It.
Hocus
there's
Pocus,
yeah.
Nightmare Before Christmas.
There's
yeah.
so Hubie Halloween.
Yes. Please.
So it's gonna be really fun.
Yeah, so that's that. That's A Nightmare on Elm Street. We hope you enjoyed listening. We hope you watched, or you will watch, or this makes you want to watch, because we love when people do that.
Yeah.
As always, follow us at Baby's First Watch List on Instagram, at Baby's Watch List on Twitter. Tell a friend.
Tell a baby.
Yeah, tell a baby. We got a few new followers not recently, so
Yeah, we had a bunch of people that liked our a random Adam Sandler reel we had.
yeah. So share our stuff. That's fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. We will see you next week for Beetlejuice.
Ooh.
It's showtime.
Bye-bye.